So, don't panic, but I've got some bad news. And that bad news is exactly what your doctor didn't tell you following your whiplash injury. First and most importantly, you survived the car accident. But after going to the hospital and having all the imaging performed, the different medical tests, having the car sent to the shop and talking to the insurance, you still have a weird problem going on. No, I'm not talking about your neck pain because we kind of expect that after a whiplash. That's not much of a surprise. But you might be noticing that your heart races randomly, that your palms are always sweaty. You might even be having a hard time falling asleep. And the first question you're going to ask yourself is, holy smokes, was my car accident that bad that I traumatized myself? Or maybe you think that you hit your head and you're just starting to experience these really weird symptoms as a result of a head injury. But the good news is that it's neither of those things and you're not losing your mind. Panic attacks after a whiplash injury aren't just a strange phenomenon that only happen in a couple of instances. They're actually really common, so you're not losing your mind, and there is a lot of stuff that you can be doing to help yourself recover after an injury. Today, I want to help put you at ease, to let you know that the panic attacks after your whiplash injury are completely normal and that you can recover. We're going to be talking about the anatomy of how that whiplash injury can affect both the brainstem and the vagus nerve, and how those two structures can then lead into pervasive panic attacks. But then finally, I want you to be able to tell the difference between a panic attack coming from swelling at the muscles at the base of your neck, or if it's coming from rotation of those bones at the top of your cervical spine. That way you know the right course of action for you, and you can start taking the right steps to recover and get your life back to normal. So, let's get started. To understand why we're having a panic attack after a car accident, we need to have a better understanding first of the anatomy. Because in a whiplash injury, our head moves forward and back very quickly, and this puts a lot of added tension to the muscles at the top of your cervical spine. That's right at the base of your skull. And if we go a couple layers deeper through the muscle and the bone, what we're going to find is your brainstem. The base of your skull is going to then be where your brain exits out of the foramen magnum, the hole in the bottom of your skull, and enters your actual spine. But it's also got some other fancy features, mainly being the central control hub of your autonomic nervous system. And autonomic, as the name kind of suggests, is automatic, all the things you do without thinking about, your digestion, your heart rate, your breathing. And when those structures get stressed from that quick forward and back motion during a whiplash injury, those muscles reactively tighten. Makes sense because breathing, heart rate, super important functions. So your body's going to do everything it can to stabilize that part of the spine to make sure your brainstem stays safe. But a key thing you want to realize is that your body suspects if those muscles are tight and we're stabilizing this part of your spine, you must be in danger. Here's the second thing to that though, because while your brainstem is the main coordinator for your autonomic nervous system, there are two parts of your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. Basically your speed up system and your slow down system. Your brainstem functions as the accelerator. That's going to be all of the signals going to your heart that say go faster, all the things that give you that rumbling in your stomach whenever you're nervous, all the things that make you breathe faster. That's all mediated by the sympathetic nervous system. Now, we also have a brake, something that slows down those automatic functions, and that is your parasympathetic system. But while that is all still regulated and maintained by the brainstem, the nerve itself that actually regulates all that is outside of your spinal cord, and it exits lateral to the spinal column in a nerve called your vagus nerve. Now, for some of you, you might be hearing the name vagus and you think partying and fun times. That's not how your vagus nerve works. Like I said, it is the brake pedal for your autonomic nervous system. And why it's called the vagus nerve is that actually translates into wanderer. It wanders the whole way through your body, and it down-regulates everything from heartbeat, breathing, digestion. Honestly, without your vagus nerve, this stuff just goes unchecked. Your heart rate will beat as fast as it can. Your breathing will happen as fast as it can. So you can start to realize why, even if the brainstem isn't directly stimulated from a whiplash injury, if we get a lot of swelling and damage to the tissue around the base of your skull, which might either twist your C1 vertebra or put direct pressure on your vagus nerve, it's going to put a kink in that signal. If we think about it like a hose and you kink up a hose so that the water quits flowing, now suddenly you don't have a brake pedal telling your brainstem and all the other organs in your system to calm down, and they're going unregulated. This is why it's useful to differentiate between the two, because you can have a panic attack for one of two reasons: either overstimulation of your accelerator or lack of stimulation for your brake pedal. So then how do we figure out if your panic attacks are coming from your spinal cord or just outside in the vagus nerve? This is where we're going to want to perform that self-test, either the pulse and posture test or the suboccipital release. Now, pulse and posture is going to let us know if this is coming from instability in the neck. More specifically, how those bones are oriented in your neck might be putting pressure on your vagus nerve. The test itself is pretty straightforward. What you're going to do first is slump forward, head down, sort of like you're looking at your cell phone. And while you're holding this position, I want you to check your pulse. Then after you check your pulse, what I want you to do is correct your posture. I want you to sit up tall, chin pulled back, kind of like a puppet on the string. If you've seen previous videos, this posture looks familiar to you. And then check your pulse again. If correcting your posture actually helps to drop your heart rate, then that lets us know that the most likely cause of your panic attacks is coming from a rotation of those upper cervical bones. Now, a quick little caveat with checking your pulse. When you do that slump check, I want you to check your pulse here at the wrist, just because if we're trying to check it here up in the jugular vein, then you're not really going to be able to feel it as well, because we might be getting a little bit of a kink just because of where that vein is relative to the curve of your neck. If you didn't get a lot of a change from that postural correction, the second thing that we're going to do is a suboccipital release. And what that looks like is I want you to take both of your thumbs and you're going to place them right at the bottom of your hairline and apply a gentle pressure. Now, your suboccipital muscles are the muscles that are going to stabilize your upper cervical vertebra posteriorly, while your deep neck flexors are going to stabilize it anteriorly. But if you notice putting pressure on those muscles starts triggering your symptoms, quickening your heart rate, or maybe you feel like you need to breathe faster, then that's signifying that our issue isn't from the structure in your neck rotating, but more coming from the muscles attaching to your cervical spine that are applying a lot of pressure, sending your brainstem into a state of fight or flight. Obviously, depending on which structure is affected is going to be the best way that we would go about fixing this panic problem. Because if a muscle goes into spasm, we need to figure out why it's in spasm and what we can do to get it to relax and find its antagonist muscle in order to get that antagonist muscle to fire and hold and increase stability in that region of your spine. But if the problem's actually coming from a mechanical rotation in those bones, it doesn't matter how strong we get those stabilizers to be, because we need to just move something back into place so it takes actual pressure off that vagus nerve where it's coming out of your skull. But most importantly, and not so obvious, beyond just getting you out of this fight or flight state and that quick panicky sensation, we need to start getting your nerves to relax before they develop a conditioned panic response. And a conditioned panic response is very much like any other kind of sensitivity. The first time you're ever stung by a bee, if you're allergic, is bad, but it's not as intense as subsequent bee stings. The first time you're exposed to something that's irritating, whether that's your annoying neighbors or the sound of a barking dog that increases your anxiety, first time normally isn't as bad as the subsequent irritations. The day after an injury, yes, your nervous system is going to be stressed because it's an acute injury, but how we develop chronic pain is those nerve fibers start learning Any quick motion, any indecisive action leads to injury or further irritation. So rather than allowing you to move, those muscles lock up, and rather than those nerves having a better sense of security, they actually become more sensitive and more hyper-reactive to the motions you can make. And so if you don't address the problem soon, eventually that sense of impending doom and panicking becomes the norm. But before we get into the whole things you can do to correct this long term, I want to give you some resources that you can actually do right now to get your panic attacks to ease up, because they come on suddenly, and even when you start correcting the muscle spasms or the misalignment in your neck, they can still happen because that vagus nerve might still be agitated, that brainstem might still be in fight or flight mode. And even though it's a little weird, the hum test is super useful. It's used for individuals even without a history of trauma to help relax or to ward off a panic attack. All you're going to do is sit comfortably, take a deep inhale for about 4 seconds, and when you exhale, you're going to hum. So all that would be is just and you sustain that hum for as long as possible. Now this works for 2 reasons. 1, the humming goes down through your throat, and that vagus nerve is running right along that tissue, so the vibration can actually help to relax that vagus nerve. Secondly, and I'm probably getting a little bit too much into the physiology of this, when you exhale, you're blowing off carbon dioxide. Your body doesn't register that you're getting enough oxygen. It actually only monitors how much carbon dioxide is in your bloodstream. And so when you have a lot of CO2 in your bloodstream, it says, holy crap, we're suffocating, we need to breathe. But what a lot of people do is they take a bunch of shallow inhales rather than taking one big long exhale to get that gas out of your system, and that'll make your body feel like you've gotten a full breath. This is definitely one of the more counterintuitive things that you would think to do, but the body's weird. You kind of need to hijack your body's receptors so that you can get back to a sense of normalcy before you set up an appointment with a physical therapist or a chiropractor to get those muscles to relax or to get that vertebral bone realigned. Now, additionally, because you just had a car accident, and a lot of the time panic attacks are just one of the things going on for you, if it's going to be a while before you feel like you can actually get around to seeing someone for this, go down into the description. There is a free link to all these resources that come down to getting proper imaging, exercises that you can perform safely and what to avoid, stretches that might make your symptoms worse, and things you can change in your day-to-day to make your ergonomics at work or at home better suited for your recovery. Additionally, if you are in the area and you need to schedule at the office, there is a link down in the description straight to our schedule. You can click on that and set up an appointment, and we'll get you fixed up as soon as you're available. But if you're not in the area, there is an additional resource for you called the Whiplash Recovery Blueprint. And what that does is it's taking you all the way from day 1 after a car accident all the way through to getting back to your normal day-to-day, being able to drive without nausea, not experiencing panic attacks, and just being able to get back to the life you had before the accident pain-free. So if you feel like you're too far away to come to the office, you're too busy to see a doctor in person, but you want to start that recovery process today, click on that link. The most important thing for me is that you don't wait so long that this becomes a chronic problem. The sooner you take action, the sooner you can start to recover. If you have any other quick questions, feel free to leave those down below or check out the rest of the YouTube channel, because there are plenty of other topics revolving around whiplash and injuries you might be dealing with post-trauma. So feel free to check those out. And until then, I'm Dr. Beck. I hope that this video was useful for you. If so, share it with a friend or leave a like. It really helps out the channel. And I will see you in the next video.